right. So the question is, there we are. We are live. So will they see us or will they not? That's the question. So, Figgin, what are you doing? You're doing check rides all week? Are you done finally?
No, I got one in the morning.
Is it yours or are you giving?
Yeah, I'm administering.
Okay, you pitching or catching?
I'm pitching.
Oh, man. All right. I see you. You see us, Dizzy. We don't see you, unfortunately, but there we go. Okay, so we'll run the intro sounds. The music will sound like this, and we'll get to the fade.
This here is a true
Fade's
story.
here.
Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fun.
And right about there, we'll ask you to come in with your "So There I Was." Then we'll take you back to, the beginning of time.
All right.
Earth was dull and formless and dark, all that good stuff. Fig, what am I missing? What am I forgetting?
I think you covered it, Broseph.
All right. Sounds good. For all of you that are watching live, welcome. Thank you very much for coming on board with us tonight. You can see that there's just the three of us. We think Bago's going to join us. In fact, can you text Bago and see if he's coming? I know Sticks is not. Okay, if you could do that, I'll finish putting everything in his way, his banners together. Sticks has the norovirus. I don't know why he works around sick people. But
He actually has it, or he's working
he's
around it.
No, he's got it. He's got it.
That's brutal.
Right? I mean, I'd rather have about anything than that. I've had it one time, and it was just miserable. So,
Yeah, I'll take COVID over that.
yeah. There you go. Okay, fun fact from Silver Drill Pickle. Each barrel of West Texas Intermediate crude yields 27 pounds of JP8, which that's a little over 4 gallons, 4.5 gallons.
Yeah.
Nice.
Who knew?
That's 55 gallons to get 4.5 gallons of jet fuel. Wow. Doesn't seem very efficient. All right.
Well, my understanding is jet fuel, diesel is the byproduct of refining gasoline.
Yeah. That's my
Well,
understanding.
Jet A is cheaper than 100 low lead for sure.
Oh yeah.
Right. That's actually I learned a little bit about that this year. I read the book, The Mysterious Case of Rudolph Diesel, the guy who invented the diesel engine.
Killing Rudolph Diesel.
Yeah.
Seriously, was he one of the guys on the Titanic by chance?
No, he almost was.
There's several high-rolling people that were on the Titanic.
Oh,
that makes you think that maybe the Titanic sank on purpose.
Yeah. Well, there are 3 theories to his death: murder, suicide, and accident. And the author of The Mysterious Case of Rudolph Diesel does a beautiful twist of fate and goes, here's why I don't think any of those. Spoiler alert. So leave it at that.
To read that one.
Yeah, it was a good book. All right, let's get into the banners here. We'll just crank right into the show and go right down the list and find out all other kinds of cool stuff too. So, is everybody ready?
Good to go.
Here we go. Oh, I got to reset my timer so I have good notes. Sorry, I'm going to do that now.
Chase, right? It's Chase.
Chase, Chayce.
Maybe that's why it's not coming up.
Yeah.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
This here is a true story about crossing the pond at night in the world's smallest cockpit on the tanker through the weather. Oh, and to the tanker crew who did that, thanks a lot. We really appreciated that. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond.
So there I was, 4 March 2002, just crossing into Afghanistan at sunset, 24,000 feet, scrolling through frequencies because, of course, we were sent to a strike frequency that no one was on, and eventually hit the right frequency, and 3 JTACs came up all at the same time, all troops in contact, and one of them jumped up with a voice in a much higher octave, screaming that he needed ECAS or emergency CAS. And so at that point, we decided of the 37 different JTACs in a 5 kilometer by 9 kilometer piece of battle space, White Lightning Bravo was who we would support.
Oh,
Dude, the hairs on my arms are standing up right now.
right. Oh,
I was
I
there.
can't wait. I can't wait to hear more of that. That's going to
White Lightning Bravo was his call sign?
Yep, 10th Mountain Division. And it was ECAS. It was ECAS because the JTAC was down, and he was the forward observer. So CAS without a qualified JTAC, as we would call it these days, is the 3 of us know it as ECAS back in the day.
Right. Oh,
Right.
well, that's great. Aviation Tales begin. Greetings, everybody. Repeat here, coming to you from New Hampshire tonight, and my co-host, Fig, where art thou?
I am out in Denver, Colorado, doing my big boy job. And it is my pleasure, our pleasure, to welcome Soup on board. So
Welcome
thank you, Soup.
aboard.
I am all ears now. I wouldn't know the end of that. Of course, we'll get to that.
We will. That's good stuff. For those who have been following this show, Soup's bride is KC, Killer Chick. And she apparently didn't have a bad enough experience with us. Talked him into coming on and doing it. So welcome aboard for the abuse.
Is this the same seat she might have been sitting in? Because some of those plaques in the back look very familiar.
Exact same seat.
Nice. Nice.
Very cool.
She's not here. That's why I get to use the office.
That's how it is at my house, too, I swear.
Right on. There you go. Oh, I have to ask this before we go back. Which one of you is senior?
By your group, me.
Oh, there you go. All right. Well, well, we all know the other answer.
That's why I have to caveat it.
There you go. All right. Perfect. All right. So, well, when's the first time you looked up into the cloudless blue sky and saw an airplane go by and went, oh, I could do that?
I got to do that.
Yeah, I think it might have been coincidence, but probably canoeing in upstate New York when I was a kid. I would go to a canoe camp every summer, and we'd canoe all over, between Lake Placid and, halfway down into the Adirondacks. And I remember being on a few lakes from time to time when a couple of Syracuse Air National Guard Warthogs would come over, back before they switched to the Viper. And then, we had both Massachusetts and Connecticut both had hogs as well. So they loved to fly around up there, usually going back and forth to Fort Drum. And so watching those guys come down the lake at 100 feet, that was pretty impressive. So that definitely got my attention.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. So we have to ask, did you, I just went blank on General Mitchell's call sign. Do you remember it, Fig? Whiskey? No.
What are you talking about?
General Mitchell. The first A-10 pilot, first hog driver we had on
Oh,
board, Connecticut
shit.
Air
Was
Guard.
it Bacchus?
Bacchus, that's
Yes,
it.
Bacchus.
Yeah.
Yes.
Boy, I'm embarrassed. I've only known him for 20 years. So sorry, Bacchus.
Yeah, Bacchus and I listened to his podcast with you guys, and I eventually was flying with those guys at the same time that stuff was going down, and he was telling some of his stories from Iraq.
Nice. Very cool.
So you
Go ahead, Fig.
you're from upstate New York, that area?
I am.
Awesome. That's beautiful country. You don't know how big a state it is until you start flying to different places, and then you go, "Holy shit, this is New York! This is forever we've been over the state of New York."
Right. Yeah.
Well, part of the problem is people who live 30 miles outside New York City call it upstate New York, which my book, if you're not north of Albany, it's not upstate.
Right. So, United States Air Force Academy graduate, yes?
Yes, I am.
How did you get yourself into that position? Did somebody mentor you, saying, "Hey, son, you should look at an academy," or how did that work?
No, I mean, nobody heard of the academy. I went to a really small rural school in upstate farm country, and the guy who gave my appointment to me at graduation was the staff sergeant from the local recruiting station. Right. I discovered it I joined Civil Air Patrol when I was a kid because I wanted to fly, and
Okay.
I mean, I'm Top Gun generation, so
Yeah,
Sure.
and I want to fly fighters, and the word on the street was the way you got to pilot training and flew fighters was go to the Air Force Academy. And so allegedly I told my high school guidance counselor, middle school guidance counselor in 7th grade, I was going to go to the academy and be a fighter pilot and aeronautical engineer. That didn't work out so well, but the other two I got worked out, and I just started doing my research and was like, that's where I want to go and what I want to do. So I put all my effort into that and applied and somehow got accepted. And kind of a running joke in this house that I got an early appointment, whereas my wife still has her rejection letter from her initial application to the academy.
Oh boy.
would that have put her a class ahead of you by chance?
No, she got in. She ended up getting her appointment really late, like in June. She would write that place every week, but in the end, I used to bring it up when I was working there as the vice commandant to the head of admissions that their program might not be spot on if they let me in early, and then
That's
Fantastic.
very well put, sir. Especially in case your wife ever watches this, it's very well put.
Well played.
Well played, sir. Well played.
Yeah.
It's
So,
your tactics are sound.
Yeah. So what was that like? What was the transition to the? We've had a few Uzumis on, but I don't think we've ever asked much about what academy life was like. What was it like? So you started there in '91.
correct.
Yeah. Okay.
It was a shock. I thought I knew what I was getting into, but I'd never visited the academy. So, it's like what there wasn't any internet back then. It was like what you read in brochures. Right. And so, I didn't know a whole lot about it. I didn't know anybody who had went here. So it was a shock to the system. I think for me, coming out of, such a small school, the academics were a huge challenge. Like I did very well militarily. I struggled academically, and I ended up dropping my major, and I still joke about the fact that I was a sophomore and I went in and I could only, because you have to graduate in 4 years. So at that point I had taken too many mechanical engineering and I was a chemical engineering major, and just what the math department was not going to have me see that through. And so I just walked into the registrar's office because there were only 5 majors I could take and still graduate on time, which you have to. And at that point,
No extra football season allowed at the Air Force Academy.
Exactly. Yeah, no redshirt year. And so by then I figured out, I'd been learning the ropes that I want to fly. And so my major didn't matter, And so I just walked in and the registrar's office and I said, what are all the football players taking? And she thought I was joking. And I said, no, I'm serious. I go, what do all the football players take? And she goes, management. I go, sign me up for that.
Boom.
Perfect.
Because I knew I wasn't going to get so in this time, we were cutting, as you guys know, right? The early 90s, fighter squadrons were going away.
Oh, yeah.
Pilot,
yeah.
get a pilot slot. So my class, to put it in perspective, right now, we hand out about 500 pilot slots a year out of the academy. And my class got cut to 225. And we had 800. I had entered with a class of 1,400. We only graduated 1,000, but 800 came in pilot qualified. So it was pretty cutthroat to go to pilot training. In fact, I thought about cross commissioning into the Army for a while.
Right.
So
Did you have to cut anybody's throat?
yeah,
Like in the middle
I did
of the
not. Yeah, I didn't have to pour anything into anybody's eye sockets.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I can totally relate because in 1993, when I was, 1996, when I was getting off active duty, I had started rushing an A-10 unit, a reserve unit back in Kansas City in a 93 time frame.
Whiteman.
At Whiteman, actually they were at Richards Gebauer initially. Then they went to Whiteman, and they were like, "Yeah, man, you're an attack guy. Yeah, we'll hire you. Well, guess what happened? Right, all those A-10 units got bracked, and anybody that with an A. So when I got off active duty, shit, man, I couldn't compete.
Yeah.
So the rest of the story.
That's brutal.
I would have.
They were
I
taking
think
guys who were almost finished with flight school in the Navy and the Marine Corps and going, or actually the Navy I think was worse. Going, hey, thanks very much.
We got one of those guys in our squadron. I don't know if you remember him, Repeat. He showed up just as we got back. Just when we got back from Westpac, he was a Navy guy, and they said, "Yep, we're cutting you guys." And then they said, "Well, you could take a commission in the Marine Corps." He was already winged, finished with flight school, and he had to go to the basic school to get his. Remember that? He showed up to the Harrier rag from the basic school.
Oh, that's brutal.
I know.
That is painful. That is.
All right. Well, enough about that.
Better than walking. Yeah.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk more about A-10s.
Yeah.
So, where'd you do your pilot training? What base?
I actually went to Whiting Field to VT3.
Oh, that's right. I read that. So, was that your choice?
It was. I was the first class to. Actually, it was the greatest choice I ever made. I was the first class to get offered this it was a brand new program, and only 2 of us went the first year on exchange with the Navy. And we had a Navy exchange officer who was an aviator, and talked to him about it. And he's like, dude, you're the first, they're going to take care of you. It's going to be way better than Air Force pilot training. So I did. And so I went to Pensacola, did API, and then, went to Whiting, VT3. It obviously took a little longer, because Air Force pilot training is on the rails, 50 weeks and you're done. And so with API, it took me about 9 months to get through the Navy side of the house. And then I went back to Vance Air Force Base. So I selected with all the Navy guys. So just like you guys do it, right? On a weekly basis, you finish. What's your NSS cut line? The Air Force had some fancy conversion to figure out what my NSS would have equaled in the previous class. And so I qualified for jets, and I went back and flew T-38s at Vance Air Force Base in Oklahoma.
Okay, so after primary, you went back into Air Force pilot
Yeah,
training.
so I still wanted to do intermediates.
Right?
Go boat.
Yeah. The Air Force wasn't having any of that. And so we did kind of a pseudo intermediate program in T-34s. So they built out like a bunch of extra rides because you guys are so heavy on instruments in primary, and we're a lot more heavy on formation. And so we did a bunch of extra formation and also our contact phase, aerobatics. We had to do some advanced aerobatics and some additional formation before we went back to T-38. But it was fun.
That's awesome. Well, did they treat you any different than they did the Marine and Naval Aviator students? You guys, you two?
Not really, because VT3 was like the joint squadron at the time, so the skipper was actually Air Force. And,
Really?
Yeah, and the XO was Navy.
Okay.
And so there were probably a handful of Air Force instructor pilots by then. So
Okay.
the Air Force had started doing it like 2 years before.
What year is this, by the way? Liz, are we talking 96-ish?
95, 96.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I was in Kingsville as an instructor, and I was taking the Goshawk, which was brand new at the time, over to Del Rio and giving Del Rio IPs rides in it, and they were coming over. We were doing a lot of cross back and forth. So that jives. So my question for you is, you got into the aviation mindset that direction, and then you went to you said Vance for T-38s. Was there a big difference in philosophical operations that you could tell, or was your program pretty Air Force-ized when you were in VT3?
Oh no.
Okay.
It was massively different. I learned early, in the Navy, if it doesn't say you can't, you can. In the Air Force, if it doesn't say you can, you can't.
Yes.
And right. And like the guys were floored by the fact that we were doing VFR night low levels in primary. Like it blew their minds.
Right.
What? And it suited me well, right? Because you start figuring out, as an A-10 guy, we're the masters of manipulating 11 214s, the Air Force instruction on, you should fly IFR to the max extent, possible at night. And we would just be like, max extent. Yeah, it's not max. I'd fall back to my Navy time and be like,
right.
No, we're going to be VFR.
Yeah, there's no way we could do IFR tonight. There's not a cloud in the sky.
Yeah, right. And I mean, everybody else is coming home on an instrument approach to Nellis, and the A-10 guys would always come in and turn a 1 mile visual, because we couldn't do an overhead. The Air Force doesn't allow overheads at night, but it was good because it kind of taught me some big boy flying early on, because you weren't handheld nearly as much. I mean, you guys know this. I'm not going to tell you anything you don't know, but for Air Force guys, they were shocked when I told them, I'd go up to Whiting, for a 5:45 a.m. sim, and I'm done at 7:30, and they're like, okay, bye. And I'd go home and go to the beach for the rest of the day. And
a little studying here and there.
Yeah, but the Air Force was a formal release program. So you were in the flight room or the ready room for 12 hours a day, regardless of what your flight schedule was.
Oh, and I had no idea that was the case.
Oh yeah.
I had just heard that recently. That hurts thinking about it.
That makes me tired already.
Yes, yeah.
And so I got back to 38s and I showed up at Vance, and all my classmates are like, oh man, this is so awesome. We don't have formal release anymore. And I'm like, this is still Mickey Mouse compared to how the Navy does it. I'm playing on the soccer team, for VT3 and the Commodores Cup. And that's more important than flying based on the scheduler.
Yes. Yeah. Right? Oh, that's great.
Far more important. So, hey, listener Sim asks, did you keep your gold wings on the Air Force uniform? But you don't get your wings out of primary. So
right. Nope. I didn't get gold wings. So
Air Force wings are made of lead.
So
sorry, dude, had to do it.
So when you went, you selected A-10s out of Vance. Right, and your A-10 rag was was it Davis-Monthan?
Yep.
Okay, and then did you stay there in an operational squadron, or did you go somewhere else?
No, I went to what we used to refer to, because now it's an Army base appropriately, No Hope Pope. So Pope Air Force Base.
Yes.
Vietnam.
I've actually been there many times, and I'm familiar with the No Hope Pope.
Well, we flew all your guys' ranges all the time, like BT-11, BT-6, Navy Air.
Yeah.
Or BT-9, BT-9, the old boat, the boats in the water.
Yes,
boats out there, in the Sound there.
Yeah,
that's okay. We used to go up to New Hampshire and fly in the Yankee 1 and 2 MOA and just tell, are you guys A-10s? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure we are.
An A-10 only MOA? I don't think so. We want to fly up there.
So did you deploy, or did you go to Korea? Fly out of Osan?
Yeah, so I did actually. It's the
Is that was where did you
out
meet?
here tonight?
Where did you meet your bride?
Oh, I met her at the academy.
Okay, okay.
But
Underclassmen.
yeah. The running joke. She was 2 years behind me. We started dating when we were lieutenants. I was the first lieutenant. She was the second lieutenant. But as you guys know from your podcast with her, she went to grad school for a couple of years.
That's
while I was at Pope. And so I did a couple of Southern Watch deployments when I was at Pope. And then I went to Osan after weapons school. So I went to weapons school out of Pope. So after my first assignment, I went to weapons school. And then after I finished weapons school, I showed up at Osan in January of 2000. January of 2001. So I was over in Osan for 9/11.
So okay.
Oh, okay.
Osan. And you were there for the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Osan.
So I did a one year remote at Osan from January 01 to January 02.
Oh, okay.
So you opened with your story that took place in March of 02.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the first time you'd been over to Afghanistan?
Yeah, so
That was real early in that war too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got home back to Pope in January of 02, and my squadron, the 74th Fighter Squadron, was on the hook for Southern Watch because at the time the A-10s were not committed to Afghanistan. So we were still sitting CSAR alert for Southern Watch. And so we spin up the weapons officer. So, the chief of weapons and tactics for the squadron, who's graduated just after me at weapons school. His wife's pregnant and she's due to pickle while we're supposed to be deployed. So I go over I was a flight commander at the time. I go over as the weapons officer, and we're going over Southern Watch, right? We get there
Sure.
Early
And
February.
Where were you based at the time?
Al Jabber.
Al Jabber. Okay.
So it's now Jabber's built up because Jabber used to be our base. Nobody else hung out there because it's miserable, and that was our Southern Watch hangout. The Vipers usually had a Viper squadron there with you, but it's usually us. We would sit CSAR alert, and they would do fly into the box and maybe occasionally drop on a repeater tower. And
Hey, Soup, real quick. We're all, we throw acronyms around like it's nothing. Would you define CSAR for our non-tactical aviator listeners?
So combat search and rescue. So unlike the Marine Corps, which does TRAP, the Air Force, we do CSAR. So in combat search and rescue, fixed wing runs the show as the rescue mission commander. So typically, if there's an event, you have an on-scene commander. So whoever's there closest, they hand it off to a rescue mission commander who's a qualified for us CSAR pilot, which we always fly under the call sign Sandy, which is, its roots go back to Vietnam with the A1 guys who did CSAR. And so for a CSAR, and CSAR is a separate upgrade for us. So you'll be in an operational squadron. It doesn't matter whether you're a wingman, a 2-ship, a 4-ship flight lead, an instructor, or an evaluator. CSAR is its own upgrade because of the very specific tactics involved. So you actually go through to be a Sandy 4, 3, 2, 1. And so Sandy 1 is a qualified rescue mission commander.
Okay.
And since the end of Desert Storm, we had A-10s on alert. And so we would sit with the jets fully cocked and ready to go so that you could run out there, flip a switch, the engines would go, and like within minutes you'd be taxiing. And so we would so that's what we did was we had to support all the guys going into the box.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, so it's like our experience is flying, right? There's so much, time of boredom, punctuated by the times of extreme significant emotional events.
Sheer
And
terror.
right. And that's seesaw, right?
Yes.
You could sit years of seesaw alert, never launch. And so we were told, you guys are sitting seesaw alert. You're not doing anything. Don't worry about what's going on in Afghanistan. And we had a squadron of Strike Eagles, a squadron of Vipers, and a D model Hornet squadron there, and Marine Corps Hornet squadron, who happened to be the guys I spun up in Iwakuni before I left Korea.
Nice.
I'm sorry, C model. They were C model guys. And they were complaining about going back and forth because if you think about it, December of 2001 was Tora Bora. And that was almost the crescendo. We thought the war was over.
Right.
Nothing was going on. And so these guys were doing milk runs to Afghanistan every day and bringing all their bombs home. They weren't doing anything. And, in a fast moving jet, it's only a 3-hour each way flight, unlike for us, which was 5. And so we were just told, hey, don't you guys worry about Afghanistan. And all the pointy nose guys were like, you guys don't want any part of Afghanistan because nothing's going on. And so we were just going about our business sitting CSAR alert until about a week out from the start of Anaconda that this whole thing got rolling.
Okay. Hey, I want
So it has
to.
in the notes there. You were on the first flight, leading that first A-10 mission into Afghanistan. So that would have been your first real combat.
Yeah, I mean, I had 01, as you guys know, combat sorties into Iraq, but
right.
Nobody's shooting at you. And but yes, it was my first one. In fact, we had no expectation of it. I was actually working out in the gym on the night of the 3rd, and I got pulled out of the gym, told to go direct to the mission planning center or mission planning cell, where Intel and everybody else is getting ready to prep for a sortie. And I walk in, and the group commander, deputy group commander, and my squadron commander are all standing there.
Uh-oh, what'd I do?
Yeah, I know. I was like, I guess I'm getting fired. And I don't remember doing anything, but there's only one reason for all these guys to be here. And I just walked in, and they said, hey, the CFAC, so the Combined Forces Air Component Commander, so the guy who owns all the air assets in CENTCOM, so the AFCENT commander, Joe Mosley, was committing A-10s to Afghanistan the next morning, and I was going to lead the sortie, and I was immediately in pilot rest. So go to bed, because in 12 hours, you're walking back in the door, getting briefed up, and you're going to go.
Wow.
Well, there's a long and comfortable night's sleep ahead.
Yeah, I'm sure that was. I'm sure that was
I'm
good,
guessing.
right?
I at least got about 5 minutes to huddle up with the wing weapons officer.
Okay.
And I just said, hey, because he's like, what are you thinking? And I said, well, we have to completely re-weapon the aircraft because SIT and CSAR alert, you are completely built out for combat search and rescue and anti-armor. So everything we were carrying at the time, we were carrying 2 cans of CBU-87, so cluster bombs, 2 cans of CBU-89, which is Gator mines, because we would use those to protect the survivor if they were ever down there. Mavericks, we had armor-piercing incendiary, so depleted uranium in the gun to kill armor. We had AIM-9s out on the outer pylons. We had an ECM, a 184 pod. So it was built for the Iraq theater, which is an armor threat. And now we're going into a completely soft target theater. And so I just told him, I said, look, dude, I don't know what we're walking into. I said, but I need airburst Mark 82s, so 500 pounds with airburst fuses on them, because I knew we were going against, soft targets. I said I need a bunch of Willie Pete white phosphorus rockets. I need some Illum. So in this case, we loaded up Lu-19s, which is covert illumination flares. So these giant, canister parachute flares. And I said, change the gun out. I want high explosive incendiary in the gun, not armor piercing. And I don't want AIM-9s in an ECM pod. That's 2 wasted stations. Because on the A10,
yeah.
on those furthest out stations 1 and 11, because we have 11 hard points.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
We
So
got
the sta-
7.
Yeah, and so like unlike most airplanes, right? Your outermost pylons it's the physics of the wing structure.
Sure.
You got to carry something a little bit light. Well, we can carry 500 pounders out there. So I was
Damn.
like, I want 500 pounders out on the wingtips, and so I at least had time to go through that. But you're absolutely right. Repeat. I went to find my wingman K9, and I was like, this is never going to happen. Like, I'm not getting my hopes up. This is going to be canceled sometime during the night. They're never going to commit us. The Air Force has hated this weapon system my entire career. So there's no way they're going to let us get into the mix. And woke up in the morning, it was still fights on.
Wow.
Did you get your weapons?
Oh, I did.
Very cool. All right.
Our maintainers
Those
like
guys, right.
to turn 2 jets, like that massive change in the
Oh, yeah.
weapons loadout. That was
Kidding me?
huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Those guys
That was-
are amazing that work.
That
on
was
the
like 2
airplanes.
hangars worth of weapons that they had to download for
Yeah.
crying out loud.
And find the new ones. Where
Yeah.
on the base of these
Right.
others even stored.
So the first day was a flight of 2.
Flight of
you
2.
guys were a flight of 2.
Okay. Hey, I
Yeah.
got one other quick stupid
Yeah.
physics questions. Since you had 500 pounders so far out, that's a hell of a moment arm. Did you have to break them off symmetrically?
No,
Or not?
No.
Okay.
And it's mainly because one, the jet, that thing doesn't care. It's a dump truck. I mean, it just because most of the time you've got on the outer pylons, even though you have an ECM pod, so a long pod 184, which is over 500 pounds,
Yeah.
and then you would have 2 AIM-9s on a DRA, on a dual rail adapter, and that thing weighs 500 pounds. So the reality was, from a weight
That's
moment arm perspective,
same
it
weight.
doesn't change much. It was just like making the airplane more practical.
Sure. Absolutely. So, okay.
Ha!
I just,
That's
and
pretty
you've
awesome.
mentioned it about being, the hated weapons platform, the most effective, most hated weapons platform probably in the history of the United States military. They want to get rid of it. But there's nothing else, which I want to ask you more about later. But I don't. They keep wanting to get rid of this airplane, and I don't understand what they think they're going to do to replace it. Because
They're not.
you got to be able to support your troops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd hate to be an Army guy, but it's
Yeah. Those
Well,
guys.
Hey, before we go any further with Afghanistan, Korea, do you have any funny or crazy Korea flying stories?
Oh yeah, there you go.
Because we spent a little time over in Iwakuni, and we would go over to Osan and occasionally
Flip it with gear and bring it
well,
back.
yeah, but we occasionally, but both Repeat and I went up in was it Papa
518.
518? Yeah. I know you guys pretty much lived over there. And, the few times that I went, every time I had some weird, some kind of spoofing, or somebody would come we got comm jammed all the time, or some perfectly English sounding voice would say, by your call sign, turn left, heading this right now. It basically would be flying you right into the WES, North Korea. So do you have any kind of crazy operational stories or any kind of buffoonery you want to talk about?
It happened all the time. I mean, like it was always interesting working with the ROCAF, with the South Korean Air Force. Especially you'd work with their F4s or F5s, like just how they'd employ, and especially if you worked with the South Korean JTACs, the Joint Terminal Attack Controllers, and we had a running joke in the squadron, and it was always that you'd get on the radio with them, you'd start working with them and trying to help them train to like work with American air crews, do close air support up. We'd be up in P518, and it almost every talk on, we'd go through the litany of a 9-line and everything else. And you guys have been there. There are a lot of bridges in Korea. And that's their favorite starting point. And so, so we would go through this whole thing, and the South Korean JTAC would just say, "You see Bridgie?" And we would say, "Yes," and contact. And they're like, "Bridgie, not your target." and like launch off into something else. And I was just like, why did we start there? Or, or they would start with like a blue roof building, and like they're all blue roof buildings.
It's everything's blue. Yes.
Yeah, and
that's not true. There's 3.
That's not your target.
That are not blue.
Did you see blue roof? Yes, that's not true. That's not your target.
Don't hit that.
Oh.
It was never a dull moment up there.
Oh man, I'm wondering. That may be a show title. Bridgie, not your target.
Yeah. Why not start with? Okay, you see the river? Yes. Okay, don't go on the west side of the river.
Don't go north of the river.
Okay.
Yeah. There was,
Roger that.
yeah.
Oh, too funny.
Okay, this just flashed into my mind. Do you happen to own, or did you own at any time, a suit made by Mr. Lim?
I have a couple of shirts made by Mr. Lim, because those are party shirts. And my suit was actually made by Mr. O.
Okay.
Falcon Taylor. And so, yes. So,
that is.
Yeah, Mr. Lim.
rich.
Mr. Lim is world famous with the 20th.
Yes.
With the 25th Fighter Squadron. Yep.
Fantastic.
Okay, I had 2 suits made by Mr. Lim, and they're both now my sons own them, and I think they became party favorites or something.
Party suits.
Yeah, but yes. Okay, I don't know. All right, let's press on. Repeat. Where are we going with this? My IQ's dropped to a severely low level at the moment.
Well, we have, but that's okay. So we're had some other stuff later on, but I'd like to go back and just circle back onto flight school real quickly, or the RAG, and see if there were any times, or for that matter, any time in your career that was either the funniest or the scariest. And when I stumped my first guest with that question, did you ever reach for the handle or pull it?
I never pulled it. I got close.
Okay.
I was at weapons school as a student, and I was on a night air interdiction ride, 4-ship, working with a Navy SEAL team, doing a comm-out attack with again, I'm flying the A model back in 2000 at weapons school. So we're dropping dumb bombs, we were dropping Mark 84s, as we used to call them, crowd pleasers. And and we were going up flying this really complicated attack, and I was the flight lead in a 4-ship and as a student. And just as we're starting to turn into the range complex at Nellis, I lose oil pressure on one of my motors, and it's no loom, and I've got a jet that probably weighs 47 or 48,000 pounds. And again, the A-10 produces 18,000 pounds of thrust on a good day. And so I've got Mark 84. I'm like wall to wall, every pylon is loaded. And so we turn around with my instructor.
For our listeners, real quick, the 84 is a 2,000-pound bomb.
Yeah.
So
I've got 2,000 pounders on board, and then all the rest of my stations are loaded with 500 pounds of ordnance. So I've got a ton of weaponry on the jet, all live, because it's weapons school, because we don't drop blue bombs at weapons school.
Right.
And so I turn around, and the jet is so heavy. It's summertime, so it's in August, September at Nellis, Nevada, and, Las Vegas. So the airplane's coming downhill, and I've got about a 3-degree glide slope on the TVB and my heads-up display, so my total velocity vector. So the best I can do is 3 degrees, nose low, and not stall the airplane. I'm flying at about 150 to 160 knots, and I'm in and out of the stall tone. And I'm just nursing this airplane home. And I've got one throttle in idle. I got the other one at max. And the engine that's at idle, the oil pressure is just coming down. And at 30 PSI in the A-10, you have to shut the engine down or it's going to seize. And so I'm watching the oil pressure and this is not good. I can't get to the jettison area because I've got all these live weapons on board, and I'm stuck. If you think about Nellis, Las Vegas, go straight north out of Las Vegas, right?
Yep.
Interstate 15. And I'm actually coming down Interstate 93, which intersects I-15. And now I've descended. I can't get into the range to jettison my weapons. I have no power. It's dark. I can't see it. I'm on night vision goggles. And now I'm flying down parallel to I-15.
Oh, shit.
And I got to jettison something, or I'm going to like if I shut the motor down, I'm out. Like if I can't keep that thing in idle, I'm out. And I'm like, and so my instructor and I are talking to the supervisor of flying, the SOF, who happens to be another one of my instructors. And he's like, "Can you get to Jettison Hill?" I'm like, "I can't get there." And he goes, "Well, my best recommendation," he goes, "on the goggles, find a really dark spot on the hillside up against the Alamos, which is the MOAs that border the range complex to the east side of Nellis." And he goes, "Get rid of the 84s." And so I went over there. I selectively jettisoned the 284s. Like I talked through it in my tapes to my instructor. Okay, flashing. This is the old analog A10. Flashing green readies meant they're coming off safe. And I selectively jettisoned that 4,000 pounds. So the airplane became a lot more flyable at that point because I immediately had to shut a motor down. And as soon as I jettisoned them, I snap back towards the airfield. And I see a flash in the back of my goggles.
You were thinking, I thought those were.
Oh no! Yeah. And so I didn't have any time to worry about it. So I had to bring this jet in single engine. I landed.
Truck.
Yeah, and so my instructor goes back, circles up, and by the time I got out of the debrief and talking to safety and everybody, the news was outside the gate.
Oh no!
Oh yeah, I'd started a massive forest fire. And I was burning down the protected pronghorn antelope range. But I was exonerated because the fusing wires were not on the airplane, so they went away safe. But turns out when you drop, a 2,000 pounder at 10,000 feet and it hits granite, it went low order. So the EOD guys found one of the bombs and they found the other one and said it went low order, but low order, for a Mark 84 is still 80%. And so it started a 3-day forest fire and I killed a bunch of protected species.
So there was some livestock. There was some livestock damage repeat. This is a reoccurring theme on this show for some reason.
Elephants and water buffalo and antelope, oh my.
Antelope. Oh, thank you for
brutal.
That was a good little core workout there for a second. I was with you, by the way, the whole time you were telling that story.
My back was standing up going, oh.
You guys know, you're sitting there and you're like in the A10, you don't have a progressive beeper. You just have, 4 to 12 knots above stall speed, you get a steady tone. And that goes to a chop, or that's 4 to 12 is the chop tone. So you have a steady tone when you're max performing the airplane and the slats come out, the leading edge slats come out. And then once it gets into the chop tone, you're in this no man's land of 4 to 12 knots above stall. You don't know where it is. It's not progressive. And so at any moment I was waiting.
Brake pretty violently when it goes.
Side slip departure.
Yeah.
Those engines are too far apart.
Right.
And so if you lose it in that state, it's not pretty.
Yeah. And you were not, yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. So that was kind of fun. Sure. Yeah.
Sporting.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that was when you were going through weapons school as a student.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. All right. Well, did you, I know you didn't complete the mission, but did they give you credit for killing some livestock, starting a forest fire, and getting the jet back safely?
Hey, that kill's a kill.
Oh, no. I had to redo the ride.
Ah, jeez.
Oh, man. What an
Well,
outrage.
hey, repeat.
All right.
We're 49 minutes in here, Rosa. Should we
I
run a
know.
commercial?
So I think we should tell our fine listeners about the wonderful people who help bring these shows to you, and then we'll come back and talk more about some fighter weapons school and some of the other cool stuff that Soup got to do. So here we
I'm going to
go.
hear the second half of the opener.
So there I was, standing in my kitchen at home, staring into the fridge like it was an aviation checklist. I had 3 options: questionable leftovers, an apple that looked like it had been on final approach for weeks, or Factor. And let me tell you, choosing Factor was like nailing a perfect landing. It just felt right. Factor meals are like gourmet in-flight service you'd never get but always dream about. They're chef prepared, dietitian approved, and ready in just 2 minutes. That's right, 2 minutes. That's faster than it takes me to find my keys when I'm running out the door. And with 40 options across 8 dietary preferences each week, it's like having a culinary control tower guiding you towards deliciousness. Here's why I love Factor. No matter how busy I am, whether I'm podcasting, running errands, or finally tackling that mountain of emails, it keeps me on track. It's not just convenience, though. These meals are good. I'm talking about things like their creamy pesto chicken or the spicy ground beef taco bowl. And let's not forget about the add-ons, smoothies, snacks, and breakfast that make every day feel like a win. So, there I was, eating healthy, saving time, and feeling great, all thanks to Factor. And now you can get in on this action too. Head to factormeals.com/SoThereIWas50off and use code SoThereIWas50off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's factormeals.com/SoThereIWas50off. So there I was, 50 off. Trust me, this is one approach you won't want to miss.
So there I was, cruising along, flight level 350, thinking my retirement plan was on autopilot. But then I realized planning for retirement isn't a set and forget situation. That's when I learned about HSI Wealth Strategies. HSI, that stands for Horizontal Situation Indicator. Like the gauge in our cockpit, it tells us exactly where to go. It's a little compass rose type thing. It's a map. Well, HSI Wealth Strategies does the same thing for your retirement, helping you stay on course to reach your financial goals. Here's the best part. These folks are pilots. They're former military aviators who still fly. They know the unique challenges pilots face with high-income careers, complex airline retirements, and the risks of conventional financial advice. They specialize in strategies to maximize your savings during your career and minimize taxes when it's time to start spending. Because taxes and inflation are like headwinds working against your progress. And HSI is saving their clients $1 million to $1.5 million on average just by optimizing retirement strategies. That's serious money, money you don't want to leave on the table. If you're looking for expert advice from someone who truly understands the cockpit and the challenges of planning for retirement as a pilot, check out HSI Wealth Strategies. Call Robbie Walling today at 214-538-7030 or email him at robert.walling@novembermike.com. That's robert.walling@nmnovembermike.com. Because when it comes to your financial future, you only get one approach. Make it count with HSI Wealth Strategies.
So I forgot that in that piece there that I didn't put anything over it and that it was you reading, Fig. So
How could you do that to me?
Sorry. So
I
just to
was
say
not
about that-
aware I was being recorded visually.
But you did just fine.
I would have put on my mustache.
It screwed me up because I went, oh, crud, Fig's talking. I'm supposed to be running this piece.
HSI Wealth Strategies doesn't care.
No, and they do good work for you. So if you're looking at financial advisors, these guys got it figured out. So thank you to Factor and HSI Wealth Strategies both for helping bring these stories to you. And that's why Fig and Bago, when they're here, the show goes so much more smoothly.
You mean Sticks and Bago. Sticks and Bago.
That's what I meant. Fig and Bago,
See,
Sticks and Bago.
this is another reason why we need one of those guys in the background, because we're just knuckleheads.
Right? Oh man, it's so true. All right, so. All right, let's see. Where did we leave off? Bridgie, not your target. No, we're well past that. Oh, killing antelope and fighter weapons school. So, what was it like to get selected for fighter weapons school? And then what was the hardest part? Choosing which 2 hours of sleep you wanted to get each night, or?
I honestly, it was the challenge was I was too young to be there.
Okay.
I had 2.5 years in the jet, and I went to fighter weapons school.
Wow.
I had 500 hours. We had 550, so I was just over the minimum. I've been an instructor for maybe 7 months. I credit my leadership that they saw something in me. In retrospect, I showed up full of piss and vinegar. I thought I was the shit. I'm a 2.5 year guy in the on the line, and now I'm at weapons school. But that hurt me because I was as an instructor, I was not mature enough to be there. I was probably way too arrogant. Thought my stuff didn't stink, which it only took a few rides to figure out that it did.
Yeah.
I got the crap kicked out of me early and often, but it was good. It was I had a great class. We had one guy wash out of my, so we had when 5 of us, we had 4 graduate, and but I credit it to everything I was able to do.
Sure.
That I joke about it now, but leading that first mission in Afghanistan was easy compared to weapons school.
I can only imagine. Holy cow. And what's that class like? How many are in the class? How many different airframes are there? What's that class structured like? Can you tell us about what fighter weapons school is?
So for the Air Force, it's huge compared to the Navy. And, I work with and have a lot of Top Gun friends, and it's a different class. It's, at that time, 5.5 months long. So you show up in July and you graduate mid-December for me. And so you have you don't have just the fighter platform. So it started where it was just the core weapons school for a long time was just the fighter platforms. So F-15, F-16, A-10, F-15E, and then Intel, so the intelligence squadron, and then air battle management. So the guys who ride on the back of the AWACS.
Okay.
And then it continually expanded with, we brought everybody in. So airlift, tankers, bombers, all of it, became part of the WIC, the weapons instructor course.
Okay.
And so what happens is you go through, and so for like 3 months, you just focus on your weapon system, your jet. And then you start doing integration. So for us, that I used to run as an instructor. I was the close air support phase manager. So I ran our CAS phase, which, no surprise for the A-10, it's 2 months long. And we would have JTACs, SEAL teams, combat controllers, all out there on the ground. And then we would bring in other weapon systems to integrate with our guys. So they got used to, like, we would even bring in EA6s out of Whidbey. So we would go, okay, how do you, like when we were doing our high threat rides, how do you employ the EA6? How do you put a prowler out there properly to jam when you're doing a high threat run in at 100 feet, with SA-15s and stuff out there. And so you go through that, you go through integration phase. And then at the very end, you have what we call mission employment phase, which is, if you guys think of Red Flag.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's Red Flag, but just the weapons school. So everybody who's flying in Red Flag is a weapons school student or instructor. So it's Red Flag on steroids.
Yep,
so we
gotcha.
do some pretty insane missions in that.
I can't imagine how long those days are. Just even preparing to go brief and fly those.
Well, and then the debriefs, right?
Yeah.
The debriefs. Well, you know, the debriefs for days seems like,
Yes.
right.
Yeah. I mean, we would debrief. We would just debrief simple cast sorties for 8 hours because you would bring everybody in. So you'd have intel and you would have the JTACs and all the support assets. And so you do a mass debrief and then you start kicking people out. You'd shrink it. And so typically we'd keep the air breathers in the room and the JTACs. And then we'd kick out the support assets. So the non-weapon school F-16s or whoever we had supporting us so we could integrate. Then you would debrief with the JTACs and then you kick them out. And then now we start a flight debrief, which starts with the students debriefing and then the instructors would debrief. So eight hours was not out of the question for a 2-hour sortie.
Repeat. That sounds just like sheer harassment, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's like making you sit in the ready room when you're not on the flight schedule too.
Right. That's just okay. Yeah. Jeez. I know, right?
Man, at some point it seems counterproductive, but having never been in that environment, maybe not. I don't know. It just
You'd always have to measure it. And when I was an instructor, like you'd get to the point and you know, there was beer and Jack Daniels and everything in the debrief.
Well, that's my kind of debrief now. All right.
Yeah.
So that loosens things up a little.
Makes it a lot easier.
Yeah,
and
there you go. All right.
like, so once we took the markers as the instructors, it was wide open for the students. Like start pouring it because it's going to ease your pain. Because here it comes.
Yes.
You know, and then a lot of times there was a famous bar. It's not there anymore. Outside the gates of Nellis called the 2-5 Club. And like the students always knew, like if you got to a certain point in the debrief, you'd be like, all right, let's everybody get your stuff. We're going to the 2-5 Club. And the students were always like, oh, we passed. Like they don't care at this point.
Yeah.
They don't care what you have to say anymore. Because like, if we're going to the 2-5 Club, then we pass this ride.
It's like a dog. Blah, 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 Ginger. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Oh, wait. There's a treat.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Oh, man.
I'm listen. I'm being selfish. Repeat. I want to hear the rest of the opening story.
So do I. So, let's get there. Let's get there.
All right. So, can you set us up again? So, it's the first combat mission into Afghanistan that you flew, and you were leading a flight of 2, and you took off from El Jabber.
El Jabber.
Okay.
So it was so our brief in the morning to like set the stage. So if you know, for folks who don't know what these dates are pretty significant. If you know what happened on Roberts Ridge when a combat controller by the name of John Chapman won the Medal of Honor, that was going on. So we had parked, we had lost Petty Officer Neil Roberts, Navy SEAL, DevGru guy, SEAL Team 6, off the back end of a 47 that got hit on the way into the top of this mountain called Takur Gar, Objective Ginger. The 47 limps off the mountain, MH-47 out of the 160 SOAR. They send in a QRF, and the QRF gets shot down. And now the QRF is fighting for their lives on top of this mountain. And this is all unbeknownst to me when I'm getting ready to go out that morning. This is happening real time. And so the best we could get, so Divot Bartley comes in, and then who is leading the 2 ship of F-16s that supported those guys on top of the mountain, won a Silver Star, and then the 2 Strike Eagles who won Silver Stars, Junior Short and Panzer came in. So Divot, the F-16 flight lead, came in and gave me a quick, no kidding. He was just walking in from doing this where they're strafing danger close on top of a 12,000 foot mountain and dropping LGBs, laser guided bombs. And he gives me hey, here's how you get in and out of Afghanistan. Kind of like, here's the rules of the road, coming and going. And that's all we had time for. And so I had no idea on what to expect. And the group commander pulled me aside and he goes, look, He goes, I know you guys don't know any of the rules of engagement or any of that because you weren't prepared to go do this. He goes, go employ tactically sound and don't worry about the rules of engagement. I've got your back. I said,
Wow.
yes, sir.
Okay.
And that's an 06, right? Saying that to me as a captain. And because what I didn't know at the time was there's a 10,000 foot hard deck, which in an A10, that is not happening. Not
Right.
fully laden.
No.
You know, two days later, I'd be down at about 100 feet at dusk on NVGs, escorting a couple of MH-47s around because it was tactically sound. But in this case, he just said, go get the job done. Like, there are guys dying on the ground. You guys need to get in there and do what you do. That's what he told me. He's like, do what you guys do best. He's like, nobody else in the world does what you do. Go do it. I was like, yes, sir. And so I threw a backpack behind the ejection seat because we didn't know where we were going. We had no idea where we were going to land. And so we were told you could land in 6 different places. Afghanistan's, at that time is closed. There's no open airfields in Afghanistan. So there are a lot of really bad options. And, or you could come all the way home. We don't know. So I'd take off, get on the tanker, 5-hour drive to Afghanistan, get in there, talk to, wasn't AWACS because at the time we didn't have enough coverage. So it was the JSTARS, and get on with them. I get no AO update whatsoever. It's just like, go do what you guys do. And what I didn't know is, we're going to a kill box, which is 30 by 30 miles.
Yep.
But the reality of the situation is the battle space is 5 by 9 clicks. And you guys know what that means. That's for jets. It's
Tight.
Small.
Right. That's a night fight in a phone booth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I also didn't know is there was probably about 30 to 45 aircraft stacked up in there. And back in 2002, there's no such thing as a stack. So if you guys think back, we had not transitioned to, like, we had just employed the new Joint Close Air Support hub, but we are doing it in draft. So type 1, 2, and 3 control were brand new.
Yep.
And so I had grown up under positive direct, like you guys know, right? Positive direct, indirect, and reasonable assurance. Now we're going to this 1, 2, and 3. And oh, by the way, we're throwing all these jets in there that have never trained for CAS in their entire life. The Strike Eagles, no idea.
Right.
Bombers, no idea. Right. I mean, the only guys who knew what the hell they were doing were the Hornets, the Bombcats, like, who had been getting into that business at that time, and us, and the AC-130s. And so it was a chocolate mess. Nobody had control. There was like no one entity. So what the command and control was doing is they were just feeding airplanes into the kill box with no deconfliction.
Well, this is kind of a nightmare scenario.
Oh, absolutely.
All by itself.
And I had no idea how bad it was because ignorance was bliss at this point in time.
Right.
Because I'm rolling in there. I'm like, I'm only a year out of weapons school. So I'm like super tactical. Like, we're blacked out, on goggles. So like no NVIS lights. So our IR lights aren't on. We're blacked out.
What time of day is it?
It's about an hour after sunset. So the worst time and there's no illume. So there's no moon. And we get in there. And so I'm rolling through strike frequencies. And I finally, my smart pack, and I finally find one. And I get on it and it explodes. And I've got 2 JTACs and this White Lightning Bravo guy. And they're all screaming, troops in contact, danger close. And I've got to make a choice because I can only support one of them. And that's when I decide this White Lightning Bravo, dude, like, I can tell by his voice, like, it's not good. Like,
He's having a bad night.
He's having a really bad night. And I go, okay, we're going to him. You guys need to clear off this frequency. So, and no kidding, he's pretty much like, hey, ECAS. So I know he's not qualified JTAC. And he goes, we got heavy machine guns and mortars, troops in the open, 700 meters south of our position. I need bombs on target cleared hot. And I'm like, That's not going to work.
Yeah, you gotta give me a little more, bud.
Because you're looking down in the abyss and there's just tracers flying everywhere because
Oh, yeah.
we have fielded 3 Army battalions on the ground. And, again, not known at the time, I would know later, there's 37 different JTACs out there and they're all on different frequencies.
Oh.
There's no ASOC because the ASOC is at Bagram and they have no line of sight communications to the valley. They have no SAT, they have no HF, and so they're blind. They're all just doing their own thing. So every time something hits, 3 JTACs are saying troops in contact, which they are. And so there was no coordination, there was no C2, and so we start working through this problem set. So my immediate problem set is this kid is probably 18-year-old with a rifle with 10th Mountain Division.
In a radio.
Right. And I said to him, I go, can you pull a grid for me? No. I go, do you have any marking devices? No, because I find out later, like if you read all the literature, these guys hit the ground and because the enemy was not where it was supposed to be, and it was 10 times the size of what it was supposed to be, they were in the low ground, right? You don't have to be an infantry officer, go to TBS to know you don't want the low ground.
No.
So they got the high ground. So as soon as they got off the helicopters during the air assault operation, they were dumping gear because they were scrambling for cover. And so they had no pointers or lasers or any of this stuff. And so I was like, dude, I can't just drop 500-pound airbursts. And at the time, because airbursts were still, we hadn't spent the time to seek Eagle. So for your listeners, Seek Eagle is who takes a weapon and tells us what the risk estimate distances are, right? So 0.1%, probability of incapacitation of a dude who's laying on the ground, prone in heavy weather gear, right? And we all know what those numbers mean. Well, we had no numbers for airburst. They'd never Seek Eagle the airburst fuse. And so we were ballparking at the time. You didn't want to get within 1,000 meters because like the frag pattern, we just didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
Right.
And so this guy
I'm
wants me
telling
to,
you, I'm sitting here with this empty feeling in my gut, and I'm slack-jawed at hearing this. And, I mean, it's like you didn't take out a battalion that night.
that's what I was worried about. And like, when this kid's saying 700 meters south, lay it on me, Sandy.
He's in the blast. He's in the frag pattern, man.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And I was just like,
You're close.
So I said to him, I go, like we're trained to, extract information when you're not working with a JTAC. So you ask the right questions, you're asking. And so finally I was like, dude, do you have any way to mark your position? And he goes, just a second. And he whips out an IR strobe, puts on his helmet.
Okay.
So now there it is in the dark, the beacon in the night. And
Nice.
but I have no way, like 700 meters. I don't have a targeting pod. This is an A model A10.
Yeah.
So
How do you guess? How do you guess distance when it's infinity? You can't tell what right?
Yeah.
So
One
what you
inch or
do-
a mile is, yeah.
what you do is you put down Willie Pete. So
There you go.
I tell him, I go, look, I'm going to put down 2 white phosphorus rockets. So that was our standard technique. Because if I put 2 rockets down, I have multiple units of measure because now I have his position. So I have his position and 2 rockets on the ground. So I put 1 rocket down where I think is 700 meters, because I'm just,
Sure.
TLAR, right? It's
Yep.
That
spitballing
looks
it.
about right.
Looks about right.
Yep.
So I rip one down and then I bracket one further because in my mind is, well, worst case scenario, if I put it too close, it's white phosphorus, he's going to live and they're going to live.
Yeah.
They're going to be burned, but they're going to live.
Yeah.
And so I go, let's put down white phosphorus. So I put down 2 rockets and he goes from the closest mark, move it 300 meters closer to me.
Oh.
And so like, well, either my rocket is at a click or his estimation is off.
Yeah.
And so I told K9, because I'm a pig in space trying to climb back up
Right.
after the rocket pass.
Pig in space.
New show title.
That is a
I'm pig
great-
in space.
That is a great analogy. That's awesome.
Climbing at 150 knots.
Right?
And trying to get back up to altitude because I can't get back up to do a 45 high altitude dive bomb, which is about maybe rolling in at 20,000 feet. And I tell K9, I'm like, hey, dude, rip 2. Just like rip 2. I'm like, so the distance, like, so that tells me, based on his estimation, the distance is 1,000 meters, move it a third of the distance closer to him. And he rolls in and he drops 282s go off. And to me, it's temporal distortion in the moment. Yeah. It feels like infinity. And I'm like, we just killed them. We killed friendlies. Like the radio goes dead. I mean, the reality is probably poor. You know, I listen to my tapes. It's probably half a second. And he just jumps on the radio. He's like, Shack. We're no longer taking effective fire. We're egressing to the north and, good to go.
Wow.
And
whoa.
But for a few microseconds, which felt to me like forever, I thought we had killed friendlies. And it was just, but I mean, it was just, but then like, that was that was a very like tactical, acute, like, let's handle this. And then all of a sudden, you stop because they've disengaged, they broke contact, they're disengaged. And I'm like, okay, so we had other JTACs on this frequency. We need to get rolling to the next guy. And all of a sudden, I'm starting to talk to another JTAC, and, a red strobe goes and splits my formation. And we're only a mile apart. So we're 6,000 feet in a wheel, so we're circling the target.
Somebody cut right through your circle.
Right through co-altitude.
Oh, shit.
And I'm like, a red strobe, that means it's a Navy guy because he's got his lights on. And
probably some dude you went through primary with,
yeah,
though.
Shot over.
And so right then I'm like, hey, dude, we got to go NVIS all. So like we brought up all our covert lights. So in the A10, we got covert top, top lights and bottom lights. So we brought up all our covert lights. And, so then we start, talking, and then talking to the JTAC. He's starting to get our eyes on an area, and like a string of 2,000 pounders blows up under my formation. And I'm like, where those came from dropped through my formation.
Yeah.
And probably within
by your canopy.
5 minutes later, or within a few minutes, like something that, it's just like your spidey sense picks something up. And I look up, which is an A10 guy. I never do. I look up, and there's a predator right off my canopy.
Oh my gosh.
That's blacked out, and I can see it. And so, and I was just like, holy shit. And I told K9, I go, dude, we're going to die from our own forces. Like, I'm not worried about, we had some 23 millimeter coming up and man pads, but it was lowbrow stuff. And so I was like, dude, like, we're our own worst enemy right now. And so I told him, I go call back to Stiletto, to the command and control aircraft, to the J-Stars. And by now, Bossman had returned, which was the AWACS. And I was like, I want to know who's in here. And we got the laundry list. B-52s. It is a party. A giant party.
Oh, my gosh.
With no deconfliction. None. Nobody owned the airspace because AWACS was just, and it wasn't their fault. They weren't trained to do this. They were just feeding jets in and out.
I'm just stunned nobody died that night from that.
Oh, we should have had guys die that night.
Yeah.
Like, run into each other or bomb each other. And I found out later that those JDAMs that came right through my formation came from flight level 390 off of a buff. A whole string of 2,000 pounders. Wow. And, it's like big sky, little bullet, big sky, little bomb. And so that was the point where we just said, I just was done with it. And both Kay and I were both forward air controllers. And so I said, tell Bossman, I'm taking the airspace. I'm like, I'm now in control of the airspace. I have on-scene command. I'm the forward air controller.
Right on.
I said, you're going to be the TAC-A, so the tactical air coordinator. So as you guys know, but for the audience, when you're running a FAC-A, TAC-A construct, the TAC-A brings everybody in, checks them in, gives them the appropriate information, and then feeds them into the fight deconflicted. And so I told K9, I go, here's how we're going to run the fight. We're going to run on our back radio, which was FM, Fox mic. So we are on FM on the back radio between us. I said, I'm going to run strike frequency on UHF, and then we'll stay tied to command and control on VHF because the A10's got 3 radios. And at the time, it was UHF, VHF, and FM. Now it's much more robust. And so I said, look, you rack and stack everybody, figure out who to send in based on gas and bombs, and then I'm going to start running strikes. And so for the rest of the night, which was a 12-hour mission, I just did forward air control all night long.
So, Soup, I got to interrupt here for just a second because I want to tell the listeners, particularly those who don't fly, he's doing this from a single seat jet with a wingman, coordinating the radios, coordinating the airspace, and taking over, having done this, made this decision and taking over and trying to get shit stacked where it needs to be so people don't die. And there are people in multi-crew aircraft all over the place that this should have been planned and executed with them controlling the airspace. I mean, God bless you. That is off the charts amazing that you had not only the wherewithal to do it, but then the ability to do it in a single seat airplane because you got shit to do. That doesn't have anything to do with controlling airspace. You have to not fly into the ground, and oh my God, I am so impressed. That is amazing.
Can we assume that you hit the tanker multiple times over that 12-hour period?
Yeah, I think I tanked 5, 6, maybe 7 times.
Wow.
And yes, it was an A model. So we had no sensors. We had no targeting pods. We had night vision goggles, and then what we used to call the poor man's FLIR. So forward-looking infrared was the IR Maverick. So I left the IR Maverick on the jet. When I weaponeered the loadout, I wanted the IR Maverick, not because we were going to shoot it, but because I needed the IR picture.
The ability to see at night.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was
That's
sporty.
awesome.
It was,
Wow.
it was a long night.
Well done, sir.
Well done indeed. I am. I
bet
am
you felt
shocked.
I bet that you felt like they poured you out of a bowl of jelly when you got out of that jet after that.
I fell asleep on the way back.
That does not surprise me in the least.
Right?
Yeah, it scared the shit out of me. We were on our last run to the tanker, and I hooked up to the tanker, and they said, hey, they've made a decision on where you guys are going to recover, because we didn't know. I was dreading it. I'm like, I got to fly 5 hours back to Kuwait. And they said, hey, you guys are going to go land in Pakistan and in Jacobabad, which is kind of in the middle of Pakistan. And we had a soft base there, but we didn't talk about it for years and years that we were actually there. But they could only get 2 jets. We only got 2 jets approved that day. We were the only show in town of A-10s. And so they said, hey, you guys need to go back in the box for one more pump, go run the show for a little more, come get gas, and they're going to go to Jacobabad, and your guys are going to be there waiting for you. So luckily, I had all this information before I left Kuwait, and some combat controllers gave me the whole, hey, if you have to go here, if you have to go here, this has an approach, this doesn't have an approach. And one of the things they told me, look, if you have to go into Jacobabad, it's Threatcon Delta. You guys know it's probably just as bad over on that side of the border than on the Afghan side of the border. Wow. And they go, so the whole thing is the airfield's blacked out. It's a box in one. And so to explain, a box in one means
thank you.
At the end of the runway, you have 4 infrared lights that are 500 feet apart vertically or down the runway.
Makes a 500-foot box to land in.
Yeah, 500-foot box.
Yep.
And then at the approach end, and then at the far end, there's one single strobe, IR, infrared strobe, tell you the end of the runway. Like, you need to stop by this point. And so the crazy thing is, we weren't certified to land on NVGs yet. This is 2002. No fighter platform was.
Yeah.
And luckily, I had an MC-130 guy in my squadron because I knew it was a possibility. I just said, "Hey, man, how do you do this?" And he goes, 20 feet on the radar altimeter, just flare. Like, all right,
Okay.
we'll probably do that. So we go flying in there, and 20 minutes out, I call the command post, and they're like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, I'm the MFer who's landing here. like I have no options, dude. I'm like in the middle of Pakistan. There's no tankers. I'm like, I'm landing. And, and so they're like, all right. And so we do the blacked out NVG landing, no problem. Pull into this horribly tiny revetment or end of EOR at the end of the runway because it's built for like MiG-21s, and our wingspan's a lot bigger. And, a bunch of soft guys come out and they're like setting up a cordon around our jet, like with guns pointed out. I'm like, we definitely did not land in a good place.
Well, at least the guns weren't pointed in,
Yeah, exactly. It's a matter of perspective.
Count small blessings in life.
Yeah. And we get a couple of soft helicopter guys who come out and start trying to pin the jet. And one of them was an A-10 guy 10 years prior, and he's doing his best. I mean, the gear pin was in the gun, and like whatever. and so we taxied in, and we couldn't get into the revetments because it was like the whole thing was like no one can know you're here. And I'm like, well, these revetments are built for Mirages and MiG-21s. You can't fit a hog in there. So we kind of like just nose in, shut it down, go into the command post. I call back to the mothership, and the 06, the group commander's like, good job. I'm waiving your pilot rest. I need you guys airborne in 8 hours because you're the only two ship in town. The Army's got their A-10s. They want A-10s. And the cavalry's on its way. Find a bed. In 2 hours, they'll get there. They'll turn the jets. They'll be ready to go. But I need you guys to get right back in the air.
It was nice of them to waive your rest for you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Because
Thanks, Skipper.
That. Oh.
Wow. So you found a cot in a tent somewhere, I suppose?
Yep. The wing commander, the airbase wing commander's tent. The dude was gracious. Like heard we were coming in because they were freaking out about it. So they woke him up, and he's like, I got a couple cots in the back of my tent. You go to my tent. And so it was awesome. And we walked out in the morning. The jets were turned around, fully armed, ready to go.
So did they fly a crew in with our armament into that little airfield to do all that in the middle of the night? That's shit hot. That's shit hot right there.
All our maintenance troops, my commander, everybody showed up and sent us out the door the next morning.
Wow. And so day two was a repeat of day one, only during its daylight hours sort of thing?
Well, that was the funny part is we immediately violated the State Department's rules because they said nighttime only. And so the Army is like, no, we need you airborne now. And so we launched at about, I don't know, early afternoon. And the daytime was quiet because it was the enemy's backyard. If you look at the history of the Sharikat Valley, the Soviets got destroyed in there. Mines everywhere. Our troopers are in waist deep snow. The valley floor is 8,500 feet. You got guys up on 12,000 foot peaks. It's brutal. It's March, right? And so our guys moved. They would move to contact during the day, but at night they would go defense. And the enemy knew that was their time to go because they knew the terrain. Our guys would hunker down. And so every night they were getting hit by this counterattack. And so we get out there, we go out, it's pretty quiet. It's daylight, refuel. There's much less air up there, but we were still the designated forward air controller. So after the first night when I called home, I said, look, we need a FAC-A on the ATO, on the air tasking order, so everybody knows who's running the fight, like when you get there. And so luckily, besides us, we had an F-16 squadron out of Alaska, Block 40s, who had forward air controllers.
Great.
And so we always had a FAC-A on station. And so we were building the air tasking order to do that. And so we got out there, we relieved the Vipers to take over for the night. And so we go in, not much going on. We're just kind of looking around, keeping an eye on things. It's pretty quiet. Go out, hit the tanker, and we come back, and all of a sudden, so I've got a 101, so 101st Airborne JTAC on top of a hill, 2 hills, north of Roberts Ridge, who's talking to a combat controller who's embedded with an Australian SAS team on the south end of the valley. And they followed these 4 technical vehicles into this really deep valley on the south side of Roberts Ridge, which we know now. At the time, we called it Objective Ginger. And it's a very, very, very deep, steep canyon in there. And I can't see because now the sun's coming down. And I can't use my goggles. It's too bright. But there's shadows in there, and I don't have a targeting pod. And so we're playing the relay game because the JTAC, or the combat controller, HOTS hotailing, has got a feed coming down off of a CIA Predator. And so they actually had rover capability at the time. They had way more capability than our Preds had. And so we're playing the telephone game. And so he tells me he's got 200 to 300 dudes that just came out of the hillside. They're getting up behind these 4 technical vehicles, and they think they finally found this counterattack force that's been coming in every night. And I can't see them. So we're going through the game. Like, I got a 9 line. The coordinates aren't good. I got an A model A10. So I got a GPS, an Iggy, but it's still, the coordinates aren't super awesome. So like, I put white phosphorus down to go, is this it? So now all of a sudden I've got a section of Hornets with me. So they show up, and they've got air bursts on board now too. So I asked the JTAC, and I go, here's the game plan. I go, you can take control because we're going to do type 2 because he can't see the target, but the CCT can see the target. I go, you take type 2 on me, and I'm going to take type 1 on the Hornets. Is that a deal? He's like, he wants nothing to do with this. He's like, deal. So I roll in, I put 4 500-pounders down, immediately get secondary. So I know I hit the technicals. Okay. And we had briefed the game plan as like, we're going to walk the bombs in because they have nowhere to go. If we hit them up front, they have to try to escape out to the east, which there's nowhere to go. We're going to box them in. And as you guys know, if you're in a tight canyon, somebody's dropping air bursts on your ass, they ain't going to be a good day for you.
Not good.
So
not good.
I dropped 4. My wingman drops 2. We bring the Hornets in. They drop 2. They drop 2. And then I just make a emotional decision that the Army at this point has not heard the GOW-8. And every Army guy on the planet knows what the GOW-8 sounds like. I said, it's time to let everybody know we're here. I said, we're going to reattack with guns. So wedge shooters guns. We put 700 rounds of high explosive incendiary down on them. And so we ended up in the end, the attack ended up getting the BDA from the combat control team was 200 to 300.
Holy shit.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Right?
That
is awesome.
It was a good feeling. Like for us, like from the standpoint of our guys aren't going to get hit tonight. Like these dudes, we just laid waste to them. They're going to think twice about ever doing this again.
Well, and those guys weren't going to do it again either. So
no attacks. No attacks that night or the night after or the night after that.
Nice. Oh, what a good feeling that must have been to know you're saving those lives.
Well, as you guys know, I mean, nothing's better than when those dudes on the ground can sleep better, right? Like knowing that you're on their shoulders, and hey, I'm here. Nothing's gonna touch you, dude.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm exhausted hearing that. Holy shit.
right? And this is just day 2.
Yeah. Yeah, we've still got 20
Day
years to go.
2.
Holy
Well, this-
shit.
I would've-
At any point, did you look at yourself like an out-of-body experience while you were there going, holy shit, man, I'm doing this is the real thing. Everything I've trained for up to this point, now I'm really doing it, and damn.
No, I got no time. Like, I mean, it was just
No
it
time
just
to
be-
do that.
Yeah, it just became you're just executing, and then everything was so, because every day I was going to get a break, right? Like day 1, we're waiving your pilot rest, and then day 2, so I go up and do that. Day 3, I got pulled out of the shower,
Of course you did.
and I wasn't supposed to be flying, and somebody thought we had UBL, and it's like getting the jet right now, like because like at this point nobody's flown, like nobody has the experience that you have with like navigating the terrain and the command and control, and they're like, we got this thing, we're going to store somebody on your wing, you need to go now. And and so for me it was 4 days straight of no rest for the wicked, and I just like, and thankfully, to my commander's credit, my squadron commander's credit, when I finally got sat down after 4 days straight, and every sortie was in the 12 to 8 hour, somewhere in that range.
I bet you felt like you were sucked through a straw.
Yeah, I was destroyed. And, like between the adrenaline and everything else, I was like, I need to take a knee. And they knew that at that point. And
Thank goodness.
And so he did, but what the interesting thing was that I wanted to just like walk away and go sleep for a decade. And he goes, before you go, I need you to write all this down.
Oh, come on.
Well,
Yeah.
not for a bad reason though. Like,
Oh no, so it had a pass down, right? So somebody else could read it and walk in there and kind of have a.
And he was a war horse. He was a Desert Storm guy. He was an Allied Force guy. He was a war horse. So this is his 3rd tango, and he's like, if you don't do this now, you will never capture like the emotion and like every like bit of it. He goes, I just want you to sit down in front of a computer and type out raw. He's like, I'm not using it for anything. He goes, this is for you. He goes, type it out raw. Like the last 4 days, what happened? And I have it. And it never got submitted for anything, like it wasn't used by anybody, because it's like
Nice.
there's a lot of F-bombs in it and whatnot, and probably inappropriate comments, and but I have it, and so I thank him for that.
Yeah, that's actually.
Oh, that's
really
cool.
awesome.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I'm glad he thought of that. I thought he was thinking about it to
I
to
did
pass
too.
as part of the after action report and all that.
Not at all.
That was my initial. That was my initial thought. Wow, that's some serious leadership shit right there, dude.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Learned a lot from him. On that.
Very
When
cool.
did,
that was your squadron commander?
Yep. Lieutenant Colonel Arden Dahl, surgeon was his call sign.
When did you guys leave? Were you ever based, like flying out of Bagram?
Yeah.
Or so when did that happen?
We got kicked out of Pakistan because the State Department couldn't take the heat anymore. So we were there for about 7 to 10 days. We went back to Kuwait, and within 2 weeks, we deployed to Bagram.
Okay, and at that point, Bagram was in pretty bad shape.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
It's like half of the runway was usable,
Gone,
right?
yeah.
Mines everywhere.
So the number one emergency procedure we would brief every day was a blown tire, because so 5,000, it was a 9,500 foot runway at the time. So 5,000 feet we'd made usable for the C-17s, but we needed, it's an A-10 density altitude. We needed the whole runway. So we had half the runway.
Unless you took off without weapons, right? I mean,
Right, and no gas.
Yeah, your choice. No weapons or no gas. You pick.
So the whole thing was, you'd be going down that runway, and once you get to the second half, you're in no man's land. because on the right side, it's all cratered out. Like you could park a Humvee in some of those craters.
Right.
And both sides of the runway are mined. And so like we would talk about it, like if you blow a tire, like you're in for a significant emotional event. And you have to choose whether you're going to shear the landing gear off and ride the titanium bathtub into the minefield, or you're going to pull the handles and hope you don't land in the minefield.
Yeah, right.
Right.
The silk into the minefield. Yeah.
Right. You got to decide what's the worst of the two evils there.
I was always going to ride that sucker in. Like I trusted the jet.
Titanium's more protective than silk.
Yeah. I'm not pulling those handles.
Oh dear God.
It was sporty. It was sporty.
So, wow. I mean,
How about this?
Go ahead.
How about this? Call sign Soup. How did that happen?
Real simple. Last name Campbell.
Of course. Why didn't I put that together?
Holy cow, Fig. Man.
I am such a dumb fuck.
You're usually
wow.
really good at that stuff.
I know.
Jeez,
well, so
yeah.
I totally lost track that his last name was Campbell. I
got
mean, I really
donut, you
did.
got a
I
couple
know
other
it,
good
but I
ones.
lost track of it. I thought soup was an acronym for something. And I was thinking of all these different things it could be, right? Jeez.
That's look at bag of
I
dust in
am
your
such a
balls. The king
maroon.
of call signs has finally failed. Bag of-
Hey, I've had a long day. A really long day.
Yeah,
Oh, my gosh.
it was like 12 hours in combat, managing airspace and dropping bombs and not hitting people in the dark. Was that kind of a long day, Fig? Or,
No, not even close to that.
Right.
No,
Hey,
it doesn't ever say that.
Fake, don't be sorry. Like the number of times I've been asked that, and I'm like, read my name tag again.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Scott
I've had the same.
Campbell.
Scott?
Like, yeah,
No.
like,
I've had the same.
You had the same thing, right?
Dude, what? Why Fig? And I'm like, really? Point to my name tag. Oh.
Oh yeah,
Oh.
same thing.
Fig
Same
Newton.
Hey, it could have been a lot worse. Trust me. It probably, by all rights, should have been a lot worse.
Yeah, the Mad Crapper comes to mind, but
There's too many syllables in
too
that.
many syllables. Oh, jeez. Well, dare we go out of there and go and move forward in your career? Because you didn't finish as captain. You did a few other cool things. And you deployed as the air planner for JSOC at the start of OIF. What was that like? That sounds like a challenging.
It was not by choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course not. No one wants to do that shit.
Was that from the deed from the
No, I was in RR, which is you can Google map it. It's
Okay.
this horrible little spot 10 miles off the Iraqi border near Jordan, Iraq, and Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
What happened was I had led the entire spin up. So we came home from Afghanistan, and as you guys remember, it's time to get ready for Iraq.
Right. Yep.
And
All
so we're getting spun up for 1003 Victor, which is the op plan for Iraq. And Pope, because of our location, was always the go-to A-10 squadrons to support JSOC. So we had a habitual training relationship because, well, Delta lives next door and SEAL Team 6 is up the street. And so we had prepared a group to get ready to go in direct support of JSOC. And so what they had planned was they were going to directly task one of the two squadrons at Pope to support them, to do specifically tier 1 JSOC missions. And so we were doing and we had that relationship. So we had been doing this training for a long time. So we had a very habitual training relationship with the 160 SOAR, so both the DAPS, so the UH-60, or the MH-60 Limas, so the gunship 60s and the little birds, the H-6s.
Yeah.
So we had developed tactics with them, and so we had a close working relationship with everybody. So we got spinning up, and we went up to the north end of the Nellis Ranges, Tonopah, in October of '02 to do rehearsals. So we were rehearsing for the start of OIF with specifically those units. And so we had us, and so this was the beginning of what we called CAF-SOF integration in the Air Force, which is conventional Air Force and special operations forces. So we were always the close-in guys because we had all these tactics and working relationships. And then if you think about it, you build an onion out. So the onion is based on distance from the friendly force. So we would do everything close in, really tight with the DAPs and the little birds. And then you go out and it was the Tomcats. And then out from there was the Strike Eagles. And so we developed these tactics and we rehearsed for a couple of weeks. And I was running this whole thing. And the time comes, it's in December of '02, and JSOC comes across the street from Bragg and says, hey, like we're ready to rock and roll. We're going to RFF, requests for forces. So it means specifically detail a squadron and tell the Air Force, we want this squadron attached to us to do this. And so it was my squadron's turn to deploy, the 74th. My wife's squadron, so we had done Afghanistan. The Guard Reserve came in, but then the 75th, my wife's squadron came in. So the way we did at Pope, we rotated.
Okay.
It was our turn. So I'm like, okay, so we're going to get this, and I'm going to run the show because I'm about to be the wing chief of weapons and tactics. And so we go into this meeting, and the JSOC guys are like, okay, who wants it? And I'm like, who wants it? Like, it's our turn. And my squadron commander was not quite the meat eater that her squadron commander was. Her squadron commander sensed hesitation and was like, we'll take it. And I was like, what the hell just happened?
What?
And I'm like, what, like, so like the meeting finishes, like, because JSOC doesn't care. We walk out of the hallway and I go to Kim's squadron commander. I'm like, Bino, you're taking me, right? Like, I built this whole thing. He goes, no, because your wife's in my squadron, you're not. And I was like,
oh shit.
And I'm like, are you shitting me? And then all of a sudden, because we said,
just happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yes, totally.
We joke about the fact that we used to joke that JSOC had like microphones in the walls in our two squadrons. Within 10 minutes, the phone rings and they go, we hear you're not flying, so you're coming with us.
Oh, shit.
And I was like, oh,
You heard
God.
that, huh? Little birdie told you.
And I'm like, please no. And so, no kidding, I got all my gear, and the first week of March, I got a C5 with all the JSOC guys and went to the middle of nowhere to go run, and effectively, so as the deputy master air attack planner, a chief of the cell, I was the liaison officer to this whole task force Tiger, which was integrating conventional fighters into JSOC. But really what I was doing was I was working as an air liaison officer to Delta and SEAL Team 6. So like every night we would just sit down and look at what their plan was for the next day and go, okay, what do you guys need for air support? Let me build it out. And because of who we were, I could call the KAOC and just go, I need the following assets to support these guys the next day. And we would get them. And then I would work through the integration on like how their JTACs would integrate all those assets.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I know you said at the beginning, where were you physically located for this?
RR, Saudi
That's
Arabia.
it. Yeah. Okay. And
And how long?
up on the northern border there? Yeah.
How long did that last? That particular assignment?
About 6 weeks. So right after Kim got shot up, thankfully I was in bed when that happened. because our guys were, rotors spinning, ready to go.
Yeah.
For the worst case scenario, if we had to put a tier 1 team down to get her. At 6 weeks, we are picking up to go to Baghdad. And so we're going to move the whole task force into Baghdad International Airport.
Okay.
And they pretty much told me I was paroled. They were like, we don't need you anymore. And they're like, you can go home, which is kind of a funny thing when you're in RR Saudi Arabia as a captain, like a young guy, and they're like, you can go home. And I'm like, how do I get home?
Right.
And
middle of nowhere.
Yeah. And luckily, because of my relationships, because I had been building relationships, because we didn't have enough assets all the time, because from time to time, our guys would get hit during the day. And so I needed all the guard guys who were out in Jordan. So the Connecticut, Massachusetts A-10 guys, and then the Viper unit that was out in Azraq. And so I'd been sharing information with them, like letting them in on what we were doing, because we needed more support. And so when the time came, of course I called back to, my home unit. I was like, can I fly? They're like, no. They're like, your wife's here. You're not going to fly here. And I'm like, and so I called the guard guys up and I go, hey, and I've been rushing, back to your point, Fig, I've been rushing this Massachusetts guard unit, and they were recruiting me. And I called them up and I go, hey, can I fly with you guys? Because I'm like cut loose. And they're like, if you can get here and you have your shit, you can fly with us. I'm like, I'll be there in a day. And so I went out to H5 in Jordan, and I got to fly a couple of combat sorties in OIF before we declared combat operations over in April of 2003.
But more importantly, I caught as long as you have your shit and you can get here. So you took your flight gear with you.
Yep.
Smart man. That's a smart man right
well
there.
Well played, sir. Yeah.
Well played. Well played.
Yeah. Fantastic.
LMNG suit. I'm good to go.
That's right.
Right. Oh, man.
That's a good call right there. That's some forethought. Yes, sir.
Right.
That's not a rookie mistake. That's strategic planning right there.
Yep.
Right. Exactly.
I'm gonna fly.
I hate to say it. We're coming up on about
an
hour
possible?
45, coming up in 2 hours. Seems like 10
I know.
minutes.
How is that possible? I feel like
know.
we've been talking for 30 minutes.
I know. Is there any chance we can go two ways? We can keep going for a while, or is there any chance you can come back in a couple 3 weeks and chat with us some more?
I can come back for sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. I think that'll be
Give everybody a break.
But you did some other really cool stuff, so love to hear more about that too. But yeah, I think it's probably time we land this airplane for tonight and say, wow, holy cow, Fig! I had no idea this was coming.
No, I know. So, I thought, wow, we're going to get a good interview in an hour. And now it's been an hour, almost 2 hours, and I feel like we just got started.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic stuff. So, oh, goodness. Well, Soup, thank you for your service, and thank you for taking charge that night. I'm sure you saved lives just in the air and on the ground by doing that. Oh, God bless you.
Yeah. If not your own, all the other poor aviators that were up there having stuff flying right by their airplanes, they had no idea that was coming past them.
Yeah, big sky, little bullet. It served me well for 25 years, but it's not something you want to rely on.
I hate lucky than good, but
I want you to know I also had a close encounter with some type of UAV in Afghanistan, and I thought, what the hell's going on out here? Nobody knows who. It was the Wild Wild West. I mean, it was literally the Wild Wild West. Anyway,
well, and
thank you for doing that.
Not to tease it, but when we get into it next time, the irony of the whole situation is I flew MQ-9s for a year in Afghanistan. Right, yeah. So the shoe is on the other foot when I was flying that thing.
Maybe in Soup trying to kill you.
Right. Let's talk about. Okay, let's save that for next time. I do want to talk about that. I know you got some good stories for that. Holy cow!
Absolutely. Well, I guess in the meantime, we can only thank you for your service, and we're thrilled that you were here with us. So.
No, it was great.
Jacked.
Great to be with you guys. Fun conversation. Can't thank you enough.
Indeed. A couple other thank yous we have to get out there, Fig. Any come to mind for you?
Well, I want to say, first of all, thank you to our producer in the background there, Bago, who's his birthday today.
Happy
Birthday boy
birthday,
Bago,
Bago.
who showed up a little late, but by golly, he showed up.
Yeah. He's 20.
Did you say 22? 22 today?
He's 30.
It's the big
He
3-0.
looks 20.
I know. 30.
You got a note
Damn.
from your mother to be up this late producing
Well,
our show, Bago?
Happy birthday, young man.
Indeed.
And thanks for
Indeed.
showing up at all
But
on your
Bago's
birthday.
mother joined us on the Hangout a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, that was
cool.
pretty awesome.
Yeah, she didn't make us any cookies, so well.
We need to thank. Well, who's your traveling partner out to Las Vegas for the
Yeah,
big
it was,
show?
It was Dave Hamilton, man, over at backbeatmedia.com, who handles our advertising for us. Deeply grateful to Dave for giving us the knowledge, and Backbeat Media for helping us find sponsors to bring these fantastic stories to you. A couple other thank yous. Thank you to Sticks, who isn't here tonight. Hope he gets better. He's battling he thinks the norovirus. So sharing some HIPAA information there about you, Sticks. Hope
You know
get
what?
better
But
soon.
by the time this comes out, it'll be historical.
Yeah.
It's okay.
That'll be a good thing. Thanks
He'll
to
be healthy by
BDS Aviation Photography, badass over there, who brought us some great photos tonight, and I'll embed them into the show as well.
Yeah, thanks for joining us tonight, badass, as well. You're awesome.
Indeed. Folks, we got some great merch at SoleraWolves.us/merch, t-shirts, towels, bikinis, all that good stuff.
It's practically bikini season again.
It's coming up fast, and we're working on some new stuff, some keychains and flasks and all that, customized over at Robin's Bird Brain Designs. She's going to be doing that for us. So that's
Speaking of flasks, I may have just gotten one, and it's pretty badass. Thank you for that, by the way.
yeah. Happy Christmas, Happy New Year. I'm starting to run out. There's a couple others I know I need to thank, but
Well, if it's the sound effects I'm hearing, we need to say thank you to the two Air Force F-16 pilots that make the Air Force sound good. That's the
indeed.
Dos
Dos.
Gringos.
The Dos Gringos, fantastic show. They lack judgment, but they're amazing musicians, and their albums are fun. So, and as
Yeah.
Bago stuck up there, hey, go to SoleraWolves.us/rate and give us a 5-star rating. And if you can't give us 5 stars, go give 3 stars to another show.
Well, at least tell us why it's not 5, because we're trainable. Well,
That's right.
we can adjust fire. We can make this a bullseye.
Right? Oh, well, thinking of that, and Sim points it out, one of our listeners, I wish I had a gun like the A-10, which is one of their songs, which is a fantastic song. So, yeah, rap. Good stuff. All right, everyone.
Hey.
Well, thanks for hanging in here with us. We hope that you're over the sweats and the chills and all that after hearing those stories, because, man, that was jaw-dropping. That was way more than I expected.
Yeah, thank you, Sue.
Yeah, indeed. Until next week, everybody, stay safe and check 6.
Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond of all the shit I was wearing on that day. Now an F-16 is cramped enough, but it's even worse with all that stuff supposed to save your life. But we knew there was no way. 'Cause when you're going down in the North Atlantic, man, it's over.
Hold on. What?
He said it's over.
Nervous?
Yes.
First time.
No, I've been nervous lots of times.
And we are out.
Where did that come from?
That's Airplane, man.
Yeah,
Oh, shit.
I recognized that right away.
Why did I not know that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
I've been nervous lots of times.
Nervous?
Right.
Oh, Soup, that was awesome, buddy.
That was fantastic.
Nice.
And fucking tastic. All right, I'm going to end the stream here, everybody, right now. Bago, welcome aboard.
Howdy,
I'm on
howdy.
the stream here, and we're going to go into the extra, and then we're going to punch for the night. So, everybody, great crowd tonight, live streaming with us. God bless you. Thanks for joining us. Happy 2025. And hey, write to we'll put those out in a while. Write to us. Repeat Fig, Bago, all at SoderaWows.us. And until next week, stay safe in Jack 6. Here we go. Ended it. I'm trying to end it.